take some mid-19th century infant nightgowns. Hi everyone, my name is Caitlin, and on this channel I teach old-fashioned sewing skills and we copy originals. We've been working through a series of getting as many baby clothes as I can get done completed before I get pregnant, so I don't have to worry about it when I do, because 9 months is not a lot of time to get 4 century worth of baby clothes done. So we're doing it now. I have here just some regular old cotton calico, and we're gonna get started. It is a yard wide, which is exactly what the Workwoman's Guide calls for. We are using the Workwoman's Guide, which is 1838, for these nightgowns. I've actually seen this exact style well into the 1880s, and so it's going to be maybe 1840s to 1880s baby night dresses. It's very adjustable. Should fit a child from birth up to about a year old, and maybe a little bit longer. So let's go ahead and get cutting. I have the Workwoman's Guide and its directions, and we will get to work. So we're going to look at plate 3, figure 14 and 15. Since nightgowns are usually made of calico or dimity or sometimes a fine twilled muslin. I probably have some cotton voile, but I may have used it all. So we're just going to use regular cotton for this, which would be somewhat similar to period calico. It does say dimity looks the best, but I don't have any dimity. It says let your material be a yard long, which is exactly what this is. And we're going to cut 2 breadths, 18 nails long. That is long. Okay, 18 nails long is 40 inches long. Oh my goodness. Okay, I'm going to look for some originals. Give me a minute. It didn't lie. I'm seeing 30 to 34. So after we take a hem, yeah, 40 inches is about right. This is going to take a lot of fabric. We're going to make 2 of them, just so I have a spare. You know, diaper blowouts and all that. I'm also going to need to iron this fabric before we cut anymore. And it looks so much better. I have folded it to match all the selvages. Also, we have the Workwoman's Guide, yes, but the Mother's Thorough Resource Guide of 1860 has another pattern for nightgowns. Workwoman's Guide is more thorough, so we're going to continue using hers, but that one is the same nightgown. So we have it folded down the middle, 2 1/4 inches from the bottom, 2 nails from the selvage, so about 4 1/2 inches from the selvage. Actually, that's the wrong end of my thing. Okay, 4 1/2 inches. We're going to put a pin. And then we're going to cut this off. So we're going to slope it off from this end all the way over, and I'm going to mark it with chalk. So I slope that off. And the Mother's Thorough Resource Guide did have it being cut a little bit shorter. It's at a yard long, so we're talking a 4-inch difference. So it says to cut my ties and my wristbands from this. I'm going to cut off the selvage for this. So it's easier. So the ties need to be about 23 inches long. Now we're not following the sleeve directions for this. Now I gotta make some decisions on sleeves. I'm definitely not doing the geekos that are in the Workwoman's Guide. That would not be appropriate. The Mother's Thorough Resource Guide says the sleeve should be 3 1/2 inches at the shoulder, but I think that's only that's how tall, which means I would need to double it, which would be 7. But that seam allowance says that's 8. Okay. And then at the hem, it says proportionately narrow at the wrist. That's not helpful. Here, I'm going to make it whatever the cuffs were going to be. That's what we're going to make it narrow at the wrist. Okay, none of these things have any great directions for how to do this, actually. Like, all it really says is the shoulder is sloped. So it says after sewing the seams, the neck and armholes are formed. The shoulder is a little bit sloped and is 1 1/2 nails long, which is about 3 inches. The armholes are a little curved and 1 3/4 nails deep. So I guess I'm just going to curve that out the bosom and back are hollowed, and the slit behind is 3 nails deep. All right, so 6 3/4. All right, so this is the back, 6 3/4 inches down. We're gonna make a slit down the center backs. Actually, hang on, I should have hollowed out the bosoms first. We're gonna guesstimate. We're gonna hollow out a back. It just says it's hollowed out. We're gonna call that hollowed out. And then it's 6 3/4 inches down. So those are the backs. They're kind of the same thing, 3 inches over. And we're gonna hollow out the front. Alright, and that's it for the cutting. Alright, on the sleeves. So I sewed them together with the Mantua Maker's hem, which is what we did with the bodice, and I am just doing a running stitch on the very bottom of the sleeve. We're going to attach this edging. I'll flip this over, and then I'm going to cut, not the whole thing, the bottom portion about halfway off so I can fill the seam. It's hard to do in these tiny little holes like this. Now I can fill the seam. That gets left kind of folded out a little bit. I guess the 1860 source does say to leave it folded, which I guess means you can lengthen it to the size of the child, but we're going to go ahead and sew the sleeve in. I realize we are machine sewing a lot of this dress, but there are just some things that are easier / better to do by hand. This tiny little hole, it would drive myself crazy trying to do that by machine. So doing this by hand is easier for me. This part, I think the sleeves always lay better when they're done in by hand than by machine. Of course, the next step is to gather in the neckline. So just, that's got to be done by hand. There are no machines that do gathering threads in the 1860s. So we're going to have to do that by hand, gather all the way around the neck. And then we can attach the edging, which I can do by machine. And I likely will do by machine because that's the easiest way to do it. Okay, so I have a gathering thread put in. What I'm going to do is evenly distribute these gathers best I can. And then I put a couple of pins, 1.5 inch on either side of the shoulder, so I'm not going to gather those. I think the illustration has it slightly gathered, so if a few gathers get in there, I'm not going to really worry about it. I'm going to concentrate all the gathers towards the front and then the back. And this is my edging. So I'm doing right sides together, skip that whole sleeve section, and I try to put the most of the gathers in the front just so it looks really nice, pretty, and full. Oh, and I cut the neckline 21 inches long. It doesn't actually tell me how to do that at all. So I measured one of my original baby dresses, and it was about 19.5. I just rounded up to 20, and I added ½ inch on either side for seam allowance. So my neckband is 21 inches. So it'll be 20 inches when it's all said and done. And so I'm going to stitch that on by machine, and we'll come back and finish it by hand. Alright, so that seam got folded over. So this is the edge of the edging that's getting folded over just a tad. And I'm making what is essentially a casing through which I'm going to put a tape, or like twill tape or something like that. And that'll draw up the neckline for a small baby, but I can also let it out so it'll fit a variety of children. Remember, the 19th century is all about adjustability, especially for infants' clothing. Not so much with women's, not at all for women's clothing, but for infants' clothing, everything is typically very highly adjustable. And this is one of the ways that we do that. And I actually just found a source for some 1/8 inch cotton twill tape, because cotton twill tape I have been using was 1/4 inch. It's far too thick. So I'm going to, I bought like 30 yards of it. We're going to replace as much as I can. I may have to order some more for all the clothes that we're going to make lately. But I'm not going to put any tapes in this for this video, because I want to have this video done and filmed by the time that is going to come in. So y'all just get to see it without tapes, but there will be tapes going in here. Alright, my next step is we're going to put a gathering thread in here. So I've already actually put one in there because I found it was because I did one and I gathered it before I did the gathering here, and I realized it was hard to keep the line straight. If I pinned it or at least marked my line before I gathered all this in, it was a lot easier. So that's what I would recommend if you're doing this. I would do this gathering thread before I did this part. So what I've did, because the directions just say 3/4 of a nail below the bosom, run a running stitch. It's a very neat running stitch. It doesn't tell you how far the bosom is. That's basically the bust line of a child. Which children are basically, I've heard it said eggs with legs, or I like to say, which rhymes, but it's really like eggs with limbs. And it's very true. So they're not really shaped, they don't really have a bust necessarily, but this is their chest measurement. What I did is I took my original 1850s dress and I just measured down to the waist, and it's about 5 inches. So I did a 5-inch one. And then I'm using this for my insertion. It's a little thinner than the Workwoman's Guide calls for. It called for something that was 3/4 of a nail, which would be about 1.5 inches wide. This is 1/2 inch wide, but I didn't have anything better, so we're gonna use it. So whatever the width of your insertion is, you're gonna do a second running thread that width. So technically this is 1 inch, but once I fold in the edges, it's going to be 1/2 inch. So I'm doing mine 1/2 inch apart. And I'm marking them with pins and I will just sew them. And it did say a very fine, neat running thread. Oh, and it starts 3.5 inches over from the side seam. That's an important note as well. Now the Workman's Guide actually gave me that measurement. These would be very cute in dimity, I'm just saying. Or a window pane. They would be adorable. But they wouldn't be very warm, so the calico is going to be warmer. And I lost my needle. Well, hopefully I don't step on that. Okay, so I have the gathering threads done and I pinned my little waist thing, which I made mine a little bit bigger than Workwoman's Guide. How much did they say? They only said 2.5 nails wide, which is like 5 5/8 inches, and that just didn't seem like enough. So I cut mine of 7, and then it's going to end up being 6.5 when it's done. It just seemed like it was going to look a little bit better, and also that seemed to match up pretty well with where my gathering ended. It was more full in the front, so that's just how I decided to do it. So I'm going to pull the gathering threads. So the next goal, alright, so the next step is going to be mostly just evening them out. It's a little bit of a stain on that one. I didn't notice until I put it behind a white background. I can probably try to wash that out. Alright, now I'm not one to waste threads. I'm going to use some of this gathering. Now I'm not one to waste threads, so I'm going to use some of this gathering thread. So it says the insertion muslin is sewn neatly to the gathers with very small, even stitches. This is going to take quite a bit of stress, so I do want to make sure that it is sewn in well. So we're going to put in the ties as well while we're here. So the Workman's Guide does not say do this, but I'm going to need to pleat my tie only because I need it to fit inside here, and my insertion is narrower than the Workman's Guide suggests using. So I'm going to stick it in there, and I'm going to sew this down a couple of times, making sure to go through all the layers. Now this is going to be the part that's put under the most stress because you're going to be pulling on these ties, so you want to make sure that these are very well set in. And of course the AC decided to kick on. Actually, that's the heat. Got cold again randomly. Alright. So that's the tie set in. And I'm going to do the exact same thing. I'm going to go across the whole top, and then I'm going to put the tie in at the end, and then do the other one. And I believe this is our last step because we've already put in sleeves, we've already done everything. The only thing I will have to do when that tape comes in is put that in the neckline, but I won't have that for the end of this video, which is fine. Alright, well there we go. So they are done. I have the one on the left tied up how you would normally tie it, like just around the back and then around the front is my understanding of how that would go. And then the one on the right is untied. So it looks like they're two different sizes, but they are not. They are literally exactly the same garment, trimmed the exact same way, everything. So they are the same thing, it's just one is tied and one is not. definitely going to fit a large variety of children. So the mistake I made with the last nightgowns, which was the 1820s through, early 1840s nightgowns, was I made the armscye pretty small. I mean, it definitely fits an infant. Would it fit a chubby child of maybe 9-10 months? Maybe not. It would fit everywhere else, maybe not the armhole, which I can always cut that out, add a little gusset in, and do something else to that. But with this one, I definitely made sure to cut the armhole a little bit bigger, which, I mean, it looks great. So there is that. I am happy with that. So I'm happy with that choice. I mean, these sleeves are the exact size as the 1860s one says to cut them. So I did do that correctly. It's just nice that they are going to be a little bit wider. I could definitely see it fitting even really a 3-year-old. Would I put a 3-year-old in this? Probably not, because they're so long and they wouldn't be able to walk around. Any child that's going to be walking, I would think you'd want a shorter nightgown or a nightdress. I need to look further into that. I have not looked past infant stuff, honestly. I know a little bit just because I've just, passing and seeing things, but I've only extensively studied birth to 6 months. I know all sorts of things about diapering habits and feeding habits and what to do here milk doesn't come in, and how to dress an infant, all the furniture you would need, how to work with a nurse if you have one, all the things from birth to 6 months. I haven't looked into anything after that, so what they do for children after that, no idea. But we'll be learning pretty soon, because that time is coming up pretty quickly. So we're almost done with birth to 6 months. I have to do a hood for 1860s. We forgot that last time. And I do need to make a cloak and a hood set for earlier that's hand sewn, probably 30s to 40s. So those are really, I think, the only things we have left from birth to 6 months. After that, I'm going to have to expand my knowledge and actually start researching into what you do after 6 months, because 6 to 8 months, about the time they start crawling-ish, and a little bit before is where my knowledge basically is. So we're going to continue to see how this plays out, but we are only like 2 months away before we start working on short-coated dresses, which I'm excited about, because I actually really enjoy doing short-coated dresses, which I think will be a lot of fun, because those will be less work in the sense they're not going to be super long, they're not going to take a lot of fabric. We're going to do them mostly in print, and overall I think it's just going to be a beautiful, beautiful experience. So I'm excited to start working on those. So as soon as we can, we're going to start hammering away with that. But for now, at least I have just about everything done. Like, there is not much more to do for this time period. So there's not much more to do with this age group. So I'm feeling fairly accomplished, because has it taken us 2 years to get to this point? Absolutely. But I do have underwear done from birth to 2. So I don't have to worry about underwear. We can go straight to dresses and outerwear, which will help a lot. Anyway, I think that's going to be about it. So if you've enjoyed the video, please like, subscribe to the channel, click that little bell notification so you're notified anytime I upload a new video. And as always, have a fantastic week, and I'll see you back here in the next video.